I hope y'all had a productive and positive and peaceful weekend. I don't know where you all are, but here in Atlanta, it's beautiful. Last week, we ended the week talking about what happens when we pretend that our pain doesn't hurt. We pretend that we're not hurting. When we suffer in silence, essentially, right? And I was actually going to talk about something else today, but over the weekend, I was seeing a lot of commentary come up around Meghan Markle and Prince Harry's interview. Now, I will say right off the bat that I'm usually not one to follow these types of things. But what stuck out to me was not so much the interview itself, because I didn't watch the entire interview. I watched clips of the interview. What stuck out to me was not the interview itself, although there were parts of the interview that I was pretty appalled by. What stuck out was the response to the interviews, and of course, they are a product of the royal family, so there's going to be commentary. So that of course we know that's the case. But the kind of commentary that I noticed was what was interesting to me from the people who are known, and from commentary in my feeds and people that I know personally. And what occurred for me is that no matter what the case may be with whether or not all of this was staged or whether it wasn't staged, there were some points in there that I think were really important that were dismissed. And number one is, in the interview, Meghan talks about her mental health status. And she talked about how difficult it was for her with all of the conversations and on the way that she was treated, being a woman of color. She's biracial, being a woman of color in the royal family, right? And even she was uncomfortable, sharing a lot of this stuff. Now, the first thing that I saw related to the interview was a person who was a body language reader. That's what you call body language expert. And I saw this interview from this body language expert. And the question was, well, was it staged or was it real? And they analyzed every movement, every gesture between her and Harry, and her alone in the interview. And then they analyzed Harry's gestures. And I thought that's interesting that, she would come forward and reveal all this personal information about herself. And of course, she revealed some personal information about the conversations inside of the royal household, or the royal family. And all that is happening is that people are trying to discount what she's saying. That's what I heard. That's a lot of what I saw. There's a lot of commentary trying to discount what she's saying. Now, I wonder if she was not a Black woman or a woman of color, if she was not biracial, she was a white woman, if this would be the same response. I wonder, would there be body language experts? Would there be, people speaking out to say that she's no good? I wonder if that would be happening if she wasn't a woman of color, right? And, as I think about these, there's the whole debacle with Sharon Osbourne defending Pierce, and her friend Pierce, and around the racism, that's defensiveness, and gaslighting, and right to comfort. There's that whole thing that happened, and there's what Pierce said, and then there's everything in between, all of the tabloids. I mean, I kind of looked it up because I wanted to see, well, what are all the responses? And I didn't really see a lot of support for her, especially in her revealing that she had a point in her life where she wanted to stop living, that she didn't want to live anymore, right? There was commentary on that. Well, her allegations of being suicidal were inaccurate. She didn't actually say she was suicidal. She said she didn't want to stop living, or she didn't want to live anymore. Just to even overanalyzing that was very troubling to me. It was very troubling to me. And the reason is because whether or not she said, I'm going to kill myself, or whether she said, I don't want to live anymore, these are two sides of the same coin. As a physician, if a patient comes in to me and says to me, I have days where I don't want to live anymore, that's a huge red flag for suicidal ideation. So, however it's said, it doesn't really matter, right? The point is that when someone speaks out about their mental health, about a struggle that they're having, particularly when it's related to race, there is a lot of gaslighting that happens. There's a lot of commentary, more so than if it were, say, a non-Black person or a non-person of color. And, one of the reasons we talked about last week, why or what happens when we stay silent, what happens when we don't talk about the hurt, that it can either have us implode or we can explode, right? And implode to the point where you don't want to live anymore. This is why people suffer in silence. This is why people don't talk about their pain, is especially, and if you look at the amount of suicide that happens in the entertainment community, and of course, the physician community, the attorney community, the dentist community, there are a lot of various communities where the suicide rates are high, but it's because there's shaming associated with speaking up and speaking out and talking about the struggle that even contributes to the mental health problems, right? And so when people get shamed about the way they feel and it's shamed about the expression of the way they feel, then it encourages the people who are watching, not only the person themselves, but the people who watch that, like these stars that come out and they come out and they speak out on their mental health. I think it's very courageous. People who are in the limelight, I think it's very courageous because other people are watching. When people who are well known come out and they speak out and reveal their own struggles with mental health, then it lets people who are watching know that they are not alone, and can sometimes give people a voice who maybe didn't have one. But when it's publicly shamed like that, it's an unconscious reinforcement that it's not okay to talk about it. It's an unconscious reinforcement to those who are suffering in silence that, well, maybe I should keep my mouth shut. And that is a very dangerous thing. It's a very dangerous thing. So one of the things we have to do is to be mindful of when people speak out that this is their life they're talking about. And you have no idea what's going on behind the scenes, right? Whether they're well known, whether they're a member of the royal family, whether they are a star, it doesn't matter. If they're courageous enough to speak out about their mental health, then it really shouldn't be public. It shouldn't be shamed, right? It should be taken heed, because you just don't know how they're impacted, and who else is being impacted by the commentary around it, right? If let's take it for example, what if you're having a conversation about let's take for example, you're having a conversation about mental health and the interview that was happening, and you talk about with maybe a family member or maybe a friend how it impacted you, and they make a comment like, well, suicide is the most selfish thing in the universe. Well, I mean, that's an opinion and people have it, and that's fine. But unless you've been on the edge, in the darkest of dark places where all you want is for the pain to stop, unless you've been in that dark place, you don't know what it's like. You don't know what it's like. So to have commentary, and you have to be mindful of who you're speaking to, what you're speaking, who you're speaking with, because it really could encourage the suffering in silence. And eventually the suffering silence could lead to permanent silence. And so, I wanted to come on. I'm not going to stay on very long today because I just feel like it was an important observation for me to make around this interview and the amount of shaming that's happening, and to connect it to what we talked about last week around, not speaking up when there's pain. But when things like this happen, when there's this public shaming, especially for people of color, especially for Black women and Black men who speak out. And then, I remember when Nick Cannon spoke out about his struggles, and there was a lot of shaming that happened around his expression and the things that have happened with him and his mental health struggles. There's just, there's a lot of people who are very insensitive to what's happening in these people's lives. But it's not just about the stars. It's not just about the people in the limelight. It's about the people who are watching and listening and reading the commentary, reading the comments, who are also suffering. It's about them as well. And the fact that all you're doing when you're shaming is encouraging others to continue suffering in silence, others to stay quiet. And you're reinforcing that unconscious conversation of it's not okay. It's not okay to be in pain. It's not okay to share your pain. It's not okay to be vulnerable. It's not okay, because this is what happens when you're vulnerable, when you share your pain, when you ask for help. And we have to begin to destigmatize mental health in our community, particularly. It's really the only way we're going to begin to heal, is to be able to be vulnerable enough to share what we're dealing with, so that we can get to these underlying, the root cause conversations that contribute to the suffering itself, and begin to get underneath the unconscious dialogues that we're telling ourselves, or that we've inherited, that we've heard, that have been placed upon us, that we've been born into, that keep us inside of that suffering. But if we can't empower and amplify our voices, so that we have a safe space to be able to, whether it's in your personal community, whether it's in social media, at a specific Facebook group, you have to be mindful, obviously, of who you tell things to, but we have to create some kind of safe space for us to destigmatize this, so that the people who are suffering in silence in our community can stop, ask for help, and we can begin to heal individually, because healing individually is what's going to have us heal together. So that's what I've got today. I'd love to hear your comments and your perspective on it. And we will continue the conversation. I don't even know what I'm talking about on Thursday. To look at my calendar. But we will continue our conversation on Thursday. So I hope that you all have a wonderful start to your week, a powerful start to your week. And I hope that this conversation made a difference for someone. If someone that needs to hear this, then please share it with them. Because my biggest commitment is that we heal and people heal. Like, I'm a healer at heart. And this is just not commentary for information. That's not what this is. This is commentary for you to take action in your life, for you to start having these important conversations with the people in your life, with the people that you love, with the people who are safe. These are conversations so that you can be able to empower the people in your life to be able to recognize red flags and signs, so that, again, you might save a life. You never know. You might save a life, and so that we can actually heal as a community. So have a wonderful rest of the day. You all know how to get in touch with me if you want to embark upon a little bit more deep work. then you just go to remapmymind.com. You can click the link in my bio. If you want to get trained in neurolinguistic programming, if you want to get trained in hypnosis, I am available for that. We have a training coming up in the summertime. So if that's something that you're interested in, if you're a healer, if you're a therapist, if you're a coach, if you are a healthcare professional, and you want to, or if you're an aspiring coach and you want to get trained in one of these disciplines, we do have a training coming up. So you can be a part of the solution. You can be a part of that, helping to heal other people if that's what you so choose to do. All right. So just hit me up in the messenger or click the link, read a little bit more about what the program's about. And once again, we will see you on Thursday. Bye.